Hello, this is my recording for problem set 3, task 4. It's the last task of problem set 3. Now, you may be wondering, why are there 4 tasks instead of 3? Aren't we already doing enough work each week? And the answer to that is back in our video for problem set 2, or for task 2, rather, where I explained that tasks 1 and 2 of this problem set are optional. Not optional. They're an either or choice. You have to do one of the two, but not both. So you only have to do 3 of the 4 tasks in this problem set, either task 1 or task 2, and then tasks 3 and task 4 are not optional. This is the last task, so I'm going to just go through it. This task is the animal quiz. It is more practice with using booleans and conditionals to achieve different results. This is another problem where we're just going to be using input and printing. Excuse me. So we're not worried about turtle or music. And the gist of this is that we're going to do one of those like online quizzes where it's like, which Hogwarts house are you? Or which element are you? Or in this case, which animal are you similar to? And we have 3 questions. So do you like to eat meat? Do you like cold weather? And do you like fuzzy things? And these 3 questions are going to determine which of, it's going to be 8 different animals you are, right? So each question is this binary true, false, yes, no kind of answer. And with 2 times 2 times 2 possibilities, there's 8 different animals that you could be. So we've assembled a list of different animals that have these different properties. So here's our table that shows us what it is. So if you like meat and you like the cold and you like fuzzy animals, then you could be a polar bear. If that's true except you don't like fuzzy animals, you might be an orca, right? Also eats meat and likes the cold. If you like meat, you like the cold, and you don't like the cold, but you like fuzzy animals, you could be a tiger, right? If you like meat and you don't like the cold and you don't like fuzzy animals, you could be a Komodo dragon. If you don't like meat, so notice that these are all true and then these all become false. If you don't like meat, but you like the cold and you prefer fuzzy animals, you could be a yak. If you don't like meat, you like the cold, and you don't prefer fuzzy animals, this one was hard, but I came up with clam. It could be a clam, right? Doesn't eat meat. Some clams do, but mostly doesn't eat meat, and thrives in cold waters, and it's definitely not fuzzy. All right. If you don't like meat and you don't like the cold and you do like fuzzy animals, you could be a bunny. And finally, if you don't like meat or cold or fuzzy animals, you could be a tortoise. So all of these different possibilities are each unique to a certain combination of Boolean answers, right? True, false answers to these 3 questions. That's what you'll be programming. So here are the functions that you have to program. A bool from response function. And notice that this time we again have given you the doc strings for these functions, right? You can just use these doc strings if you want. You could also write your own, which might be a helpful exercise in making sure you understand the problems. So, bool from response, right? We're going to take a response that the user is typing in with input, and we don't want to require that they type exactly like Python style, like true with a capital T, right? They may have never heard of Python. And we're going to go with a yes/no response instead of true/false. So this function is going to be given a response value, which is a string. It doesn't use input itself. And we're going to say if that string begins with a capital or lowercase y, then this function should return true. Otherwise, it should return false. So this function is a predicate, right? Because it's a function that always returns true or false. There are some methods of strings, right? A method is a kind of function that uses this dot called dot lower and dot starts with that are helpful for making this work. You could also use the indexing operation with square brackets as we saw in the lecture. So you're going to define this predicate that takes a string and tells us basically, does it start with a Y? Don't care about upper or lowercase, does it start with a Y? And that's how we're going to convert an answer, like yes or no, into a Boolean, like true or false. All right, bool from user is a function. It takes a prompt string as its one parameter, and it's going to use that prompt string to ask the user a yes/no question. So it's going to call the input function, right, that we've used before to pause the program and wait for somebody to type. And this function is going to return a Boolean, right, using that bool from response function. So this fruitful function, which is a predicate, is going to use this other predicate as part of its result value. This predicate here is more complicated because it also uses input and pauses the program in the process. All right, with those two functions out of the way, we're going to define choose animal. This one takes 3 Boolean values as inputs. So do you like meat? Do you like the cold? Do you prefer fuzzy animals over non-fuzzy animals? Based on those 3 Boolean values, this function is going to return one of the animals from the table up here as a string. So the string polar space bear or the string tiger, right? So this is a function that takes 3 Boolean inputs, returns a string. And that's going to be basically the logic of the program. If this, then this animal, right? Okay, last function to define, we're going to put everything together, is animal quiz. No parameters here. And it's an interactive function that uses prompts and then printing to sort of let the user type and then respond. So this is going to prompt the user with 3 yes/no questions, and then display the animal determined by their answers, right, based on that table. Notice that it doesn't say it here, but you have to get the question wording exactly correct if you want full credit. This function must use bool from user and choose animal as functions that it uses to achieve its result, right? So don't copy paste code between these. Just call your other functions when you need it. All right, we've given some suggested testing inputs and outputs here. And sample outputs for the Boolean from user, where we write the inputs in blue here, so you can see what they'll look like in Thonny. Sample outputs for choose animal, right? Not all 8 are represented here, but there's 8 possibilities. And then here's sample outputs from animal quiz, right? And remember, there's that diff checker tool. I think it's linked in the notes of task 2 for this problem, said it was linked in task 1 as well. You can use that diff checker tool to compare strings exactly to make sure that you have exactly the right outputs. But make sure that you get these prompt values worded exactly correct, and you have this message up here exactly. If you want, the extra goal of making sure that your output is exactly correct. Notice how like anything that begins with a Y is treated as a yes. Anything that does not, like unsure or maybe, even absolutely, right? The computer is not that smart. It says didn't start with a Y. I guess it doesn't count as true. All right. There is some automatic testing that we provide where you can uncomment things. The test bool from response function prints out a whole bunch of tests, right? So this is like a more thorough testing that we have provided for you to make your life easier. And it prints failed if one of these tests fails. So it should be fairly obvious to see in the printed output. All right, some notes for this problem set. There's a lower method that returns a lowercase version of the string. So wendywellesley.lower is Wendy Wellesley lowercase, right? This is a useful function for checking, whether something is, say, starting with a Y, regardless of whether it began as uppercase or lowercase. If we convert it to lowercase, we can more easily check that value. There's a starts with method. that takes one argument and it determines, does the string before the dot start with the string that was the argument, right? True or false. So this is a useful method. In lecture, we also talked about that indexing operation with square brackets, which is another way that you could look at the first character of a string to determine if it was a Y or not. Other notes, in bool from response, in bool from user, you must use bool from response. And in animal quiz, you must use bool from user and choose animal. And finally, you must ask exactly the same questions in the same order, right? Your printout should match the examples above exactly. I'm going to go ahead and go through the rubric for this task, and that will be it for this video. So what are the core goals, right? And this is how you will be graded. Core goal number 1, bool from response. Correct results for that, 3 tests, right? Bool from user, correct result for that, 3 tests. Choose animal, 8 tests there. Animal quiz should print the correct results, right? And this is actually a test of printing the correct animal name on the last line of output. So I think there's an extra test that the animal quiz full output is correct. Okay, those are our tests of your different functions. Then what are our restrictions on how you define them, right? So you have to define bool from response, and you have to either use the dot starts with method or use string indexing with those square brackets to check the first letter of the response. In bool from user, you have to call bool from response, like I already mentioned. In choose animal, you have to call bool from user, and you have to use at least one if statement, right? This is a place where conditionals are required. Oh, sorry. I said you have to call bool from user. That's wrong. You should not call bool from user in bool from response. Or sorry, bool from user or bool from response in choose animal. I'm slipping a bit. Right, choose animal is all about you give me 3 booleans, I will pick the animal that corresponds to those things. But it doesn't know where those 3 booleans come from, right? That's a different responsibility. And so choose animal should not be calling those functions. Animal quiz. So we have to define animal quiz. And guess what? Here's where we have to call bool from user, right? And we're also going to call choose animal here. What are our extra goals? So there are 9 different tests for bool from response. We're getting a little bit sort of more detailed here in our tests. We're going to test that the animal quiz full output is exactly correct, like I was mentioning, right? It's an extra goal, but it's an important one. We're going to test whether when you define bool from response, you have to call lower in at least one place. And finally, in animal quiz, you should call bool from user in exactly 3 places and choose animal in exactly 1 place. This isn't really a hard extra test because to do things correctly, you should be doing that already. So those are the goals for animal quiz, and that's the end of my problem set video on that.